His first week submerged, and a chief presses a breathing mask into his hands. No briefing, no warning. Just an order: crawl into the sewage line and unclog it. He is an E1, the lowest-ranking sailor on a nuclear submarine. 3 compartments forward, the officer who signed his orders lies in a private rack behind a curtain with 4 times the living space. Same vessel, same ocean, 2 entirely different worlds. What it costs to survive at the bottom of this machine is something the Navy never put on a poster. Aboard a U.S. nuclear submarine, the lowest-ranking sailors wake up to a world defined by chores no one volunteers for. The mess deck becomes their second home, and the scullery, the dishwashing corner, never lets them forget it. For about 7 hours every week, an E1 or E2 is knee-deep in mess crank duty. That means scrubbing trays, stacking racks, and loading the commercial dishwasher. If the machine fails, it is back to hand cranking the sink, moving the hose back and forth until arms ache. The air is thick with the hiss of steam, the metallic clatter of dishes, and a sharp ammonia tang that seeps from the carbon dioxide scrubbers. Veterans say you can smell it in your hair for days. Garbage duty is next. Every 24 hours, junior sailors collect and compact the boat's waste, bagging it tight before stowing it in the incinerator line. The whole process takes about 3.5 hours each week, but the sensory load lingers far longer. The scent of stale food and sour milk, the faint rumble of the incinerator, and the constant risk of a bag tearing open in a narrow passageway. These are memories that stick. No matter the hour, the job is always waiting, and it is always delegated down the chain. Coffee is the unofficial fuel of every watch section. For the youngest sailors, it means running trays of hot mugs from the galley to the control room 4 or 5 times a day. Each trip is a balancing act, dodging officers, squeezing past gear, and hoping not to spill on the metal decking. The routine is relentless, a 5-minute sprint repeated over and over day and night. Every spilled drop is another reason to move faster next time. These chores aren't just background noise. They carve out 1/3 of a junior sailor's week, eating into study time, sleep, and whatever passes for personal space. The Navy's official watch bill might call it general maintenance, but for those at the bottom, it is a constant reminder of where they stand. The mess, the garbage, and the coffee runs form the backbone of life below decks, shaping both the rhythm of the boat and the character of the crew. Cleanliness on a nuclear submarine is less about routine and more about constant scrutiny. Twice per shift, junior sailors, E1 and E2, are ordered to clean the heads. There is no privacy, chemical cleaners sting the eyes, and every surface is checked by a senior petty officer. A gloved finger along a rim, a quick flip of the lid, any missed spot, stray hair, or lingering odor is called out immediately. Sometimes it is a joke, sometimes a sharp command, but always a signal. Nothing escapes notice. Once a week, each watch section faces a public hygiene call-out. On the mess deck, the senior petty officer reads off names. If a uniform smells, if body odor hangs in the air, if boots track grease, it is announced for everyone to hear. Reddit testimonies recall the sting. If you get called out for stink, you get a wet wipe and a new nickname. It sticks until you fix the problem. These callouts are routine. Once a week, every section, no exceptions. In a sealed tube with over 100 men, even a small lapse spreads quickly. Disease, discomfort, and morale all ride on the details, so enforcement is relentless. For senior petty officers, these rituals are more than hygiene checks. They are informal evaluations. A spotless head or a crisp uniform signals discipline and attention to detail. Lapses hint at unreliability. Public embarrassment becomes a tool to test how sailors handle pressure and recover from being singled out. One senior put it plainly: if you cannot keep yourself or your space clean, how can we trust you with a reactor valve or a damage control line? For the newest sailors, every cleaning task is an assessment. The head, the uniform, even the air are all watched. On a submarine, survival at the bottom starts with passing the tests no one else wants. Every small failure is remembered long before it is ever written down. On a nuclear submarine, every junior sailor carries a qualification card, a thick laminated booklet packed with signatures that chart their progress. Each signature represents a system mastered, a procedure learned, or an emergency drill completed. The card is always close at hand, tucked into a pocket or slipped inside a meal tray's waterproof sleeve, because missing even one signature can stall advancement or send a sailor back to the surface fleet. The pace is unyielding. About 45 signatures are needed each month to stay on track for the 12-month deadline. That means finding a qualified watchstander, demonstrating knowledge, and earning a signature, sometimes in the galley line, sometimes during a hurried break, always squeezed into an already packed schedule. Senior sailors rarely let mistakes slide. A missed detail or shaky answer can mean repeating a module, and the card itself becomes a passport, constantly checked and scrutinized, and if incomplete, a barrier to the next step. Mentor oversight is strict. The sea dad or sea mom, usually a senior petty officer or seasoned crew member, tracks every signature. Each week they inspect the card, quiz the sailor on technical details, and log missing marks. Their authority is absolute. A wrong answer means no signature, and sometimes an entire section must be redone. As one sea dad put it in 2025, sometimes you have to hold back a signature. If they are not ready, I am not signing. It is their name on the card, but it is my reputation on the line too. The system is built for attrition. The card fills slowly in the gaps between scrubbing decks, running errands, and scraping trays. Every hour spent on chores is an hour lost to study, and the deadline never shifts. Falling behind means facing the qualification board unprepared, a risk that can end a submarine career before it begins. The grind is relentless, and the real test is surviving the bureaucracy and constant scrutiny. Aboard a nuclear submarine, the qualification board is the moment every junior sailor dreads. The process is never just about what is written on the card. 3 members, 2 senior petty officers, and a watch-standing officer sit across the table, their faces impassive under fluorescent lights. The sailor stands alone, card in hand, sweat prickling under stiff fabric. The questions come fast: emergency shutdowns, damage control, where to find the backup air valve in a blackout. Every answer is measured, every pause noted. But technical knowledge is only half the test. Politics play out in whispers and glances. Stories circulate. One sailor passed despite missing 2 signatures because his sea dad was tight with the board's chief. Another, who had clashed with a senior, got tripped up on a technicality and was sent back to the surface fleet. The board's power is absolute. A single word, fail, can end a submarine career on the spot. The stakes are clear: pass and you move up in the world. Fail and you pack your bag for shore duty. Yet there is a filter even before the board. Every candidate faces the Navy's psychological screening, a hurdle as opaque as it is unforgiving. The MMPI-2, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, waits in a sealed envelope. Sailors joke that the Navy does not want normal people, but the reality is colder. High scores on the psychopathic, deviate, paranoia, and schizotypy scales flag a sailor for removal. The cutoff hovers near a T-score of 70, but the threshold is never officially revealed. If the numbers are wrong, the board never convenes. The sailor is quietly reassigned, their dreams of dolphins over before they start. The secrecy around the psych filter is by design. Official requests for board evaluation rubrics are denied or redacted. The reason is always the same: operational security. But to the sailor on the hot seat, none of that matters. The board is a wall, and most do not know if they will pass until the verdict lands. For those who succeed, the reward is more than a badge. It is the first real step out of the lowest ranks, and the only way to escape the endless cycle of chores, humiliation, and anonymity that defines life at the bottom of the boat. For the lowest-ranking sailors, sleep is not a right, but a negotiation with the boat's geometry and the needs of everyone ranked above. The numbers tell the story before the first head hits the pillow. A hot rack on a Virginia-class submarine gives each E, 1 through E4, about 12 cubic feet of personal space, barely enough to stretch out and far less than a standard office desk. The locker volume for personal belongings is even smaller, about 0.8 cubic feet, forcing sailors to compress their lives into a space the size of a shoebox. Every item must be packed in Ziploc bags or wedged behind a bunk rail, ready to clear out at a moment's notice. The rack itself is always in motion. 4 sailors share a single bunk in 12-hour rotations. Turnover means one sailor strips the rack, wipes down the vinyl, and stashes his gear, while the next stands by with bedding and a phone already sealed in plastic. The handoff can take up to 45 minutes, and it often overlaps with a coffee run or a late-night cleaning shift. If a sailor's schedule slips, there is no backup plan. He finds a corner in the torpedo room or curls up on the mess deck couch, wrapped in a jacket to block the chill from the air vents. 1E1 described it as sleeping in a metal box that still smells like the last guy's socks, with the hum of pumps rattling your bones. Fatigue builds layer by layer. Sleep comes in fragments, 2 hours here, 3 there, broken by alarms, turnover, or the need to move for a senior's inspection. The constant shuffle means the body never fully relaxes. Even off watch, the mind stays alert for the next knock on the rack or a call to clear out. In these cramped nights, rest is a privilege that must be earned, and exhaustion is the price of survival at the bottom of the hierarchy. The moment a sailor earns their dolphins, everything changes. The ceremony itself is brief, a pin pressed into the uniform, a handshake from the chief, a few words murmured over the low hum of machinery. But the effect is immediate and unmistakable. For a year, junior sailors have lived in the shadow of that little silver badge, watching it glint on the chests of those who made it through. Now, as it is fastened in place, the invisible wall lifts. The nickname that followed them since their first day is replaced by their rating. The mess deck chatter quiets, and for the first time, they are invited to sit among the qualified. The practical rewards arrive just as suddenly. Hot racking ends. The new badge grants a move to an upright rack, a permanent space. No more stripping sheets for the next shift. No more waking to the smell of someone else's boots. The locker is theirs alone, and for the first time, a personal tablet or second phone is allowed. Even the air feels different. One sailor recalled, "It was like walking out of a tunnel. The next night I slept alone, and it was the first real rest I had in months." This badge is more than a symbol. Navy records show that 78% of sailors who earn their dolphins within the first year choose to stay in the submarine force for at least 3 more years. For those who do not, the number drops to 62%. The dolphins are a ticket out of the cycle of chores and scrutiny, a passport to the inner circle, and a promise of a future that looks nothing like the year that came before. In the tight confines of a nuclear submarine, that small piece of metal carries the weight of survival, identity, and belonging. Numbers rarely make it into stories about submarine life, but the Navy's own health surveillance tables tell a stark tale. Among junior enlisted submariners, diagnosed depression runs at 1.8% per year, twice the rate found in their peers on surface ships. Suicidal ideation is reported at 0.6%, also double the surface fleet's number. The Bureau of Medicine and Surgery has tracked these figures for over a decade, and the pattern holds steady. It is not just the isolation or the lack of sunlight, it is the unrelenting schedule, the constant evaluation, and the pressure to never fall behind. Statisticians have traced a moderate correlation, about 0.42, between the hours spent on support chores and the likelihood of mental health diagnoses. The more time a sailor spends scrubbing, hauling, or running trays, the higher the risk. For some, the strain becomes visible only when it is too late. One anonymized case drawn from a 2021 Veterans Affairs forum follows a petty officer who entered a patrol as a qualified submariner and left stripped of his dolphins. After 70 days underwater, insomnia and intrusive thoughts gave way to a formal diagnosis of clinical depression. The Navy's process is swift. A flagged MMPI-2 score leads to what sailors call denuking, removal from the nuclear pipeline. Within weeks, reassignment to the surface fleet and the loss of submarine status become official. The badge that once promised a future now sits in a drawer, and the sailor's career path closes off. These are not isolated stories. Each year, about 0.4% of junior submariners are removed for psychological reasons, 4 times the rate seen elsewhere in the fleet. The numbers are small, but the consequences are absolute. For every sailor who earns their dolphins, there is another who disappears from the roster, a reminder that the cost of survival at the bottom is measured not just in hours or rank, but in health, identity, and the silent risk of being left behind. Humor becomes a kind of armor on a submarine, especially for those at the bottom of the rank ladder. In the tightest corners of the boat, laughter is currency and ritual is survival. The male buoy prank is a classic, and during a slow watch, a group of juniors will convince the newest sailor that a special buoy, supposedly carrying mail, must be retrieved from the ocean. The victim, half awake and still in red-lit night mode, is handed a pair of gloves and a harness, then stood by the escape trunk. The crew watches as he waits for the signal, only to realize after a few minutes of dead silence and stifled giggles that the entire boat is in on the joke. This prank, performed an average of 2.4 times per patrol, breaks the monotony and resets the group's mood. It is not just about pranks. First-name basis moments, rare in most military settings, happen here in the galley, or during a late-night cleaning shift. Senior sailors call out, "Hey Chris, grab that tray," and for a few minutes, the rigid hierarchy softens. The dark humor is relentless, and jokes about hull leaks, reactor alarms, or the smell in the head circulate with a frequency that would shock outsiders. One junior described it as laughing in the dark because everyone knows what's waiting outside the hatch. Researchers have measured the effect. Crew endurance studies show that shared laughter and ritual pranks trigger a drop in cortisol, the body's main stress hormone. The Navy's own surveys put the male buoy prank near the top of effective stress relievers, with most sailors rating it a 4 out of 5 for boosting morale. In a world where sleep is rationed and privacy is a rumor, these moments of collective relief are more than entertainment. They are a prescription for survival. The group of juniors laughing together in the mess deck is not just blowing off steam, they are building the only safety net that exists at the bottom of the submarine's social order. Nearly half of all submarine sailors are E1 through E4 sailors, each cycling through 6-hour watches, sharing racks, and enduring a year-long relentless qualification. Navy records show rates of anxiety and sleep deprivation far above the fleet average. Yet for those who earn their dolphins, identity hardens into lifelong pride. In a world that rarely sees this grind, their quiet endurance holds the line, unseen but essential. What would it take for you to last a single patrol?